Good evening and welcome. My name is Michele and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin Up. I'd like to welcome you today. If you're new to my channel, please say hello and let us know where you are from. And because it's always good saying hello to new people, and everybody else who jumps on likes to say hello to you as well, I'm sure. So I'm going to get this started tonight fairly quickly because my room is a little bit stuffy. I've had to close it all up just to keep it cool. So let me turn my camera down and let's get started, and I'll show you what we're going to play with today. Okay, so there's my desk. Let me just line this up a little bit better for you. I hope that's all okay. My camera is sort of playing up a little bit. Hi, Deborah. How are you? It sort of wouldn't, I had myself standing on my head there for a little while, and then I was going sideways and just trying to get it right. Okay, so what I thought we'd play with today is one of the new papers in the Sale-A-Bration that's coming out in January, which is this one here. And you can't really tell what it is by that, but it is the, whoops, let me grab it over here, this beautiful paper with the birds on it. So as you can see, I've chopped out some birds, and we're going to do a little bit of fussy cutting. So some of the colors that go with this designer series paper, and this is called Light Airy. It's a 12 by 12 designer series paper, so great for your scrapbooking as well as your card making. It's been a bit muggy there today, Deborah. Yeah, we had a big storm here last night, and but we've had no rain today, but it's been quite warm. So possibly may get some rain later on tonight. They say it's going to be raining most of this week. Anyway, the colours that go with this is the boho blue, bubble bath, calypso coral, crumb cake, daffodil delight, flirty flamingo, fresh freesia, garden green, lost lagoon, misty moonlight, pecan pie, and soft sea foam. So some really nice colours that actually work well with this. It's hot in Victoria, and you've had a storm this afternoon. Yeah, well, I wouldn't be surprised if we get one here tonight. So anyway, let me just show you what I've got. So I'm going to pop those out of the road for the moment. And what I've sort of got an idea in my head. I'm flying by the seat of my pants like I generally do. But I'm going to do a card with a basic white card base. So I've got a piece of basic white here, which is half a sheet of A4. So if you're using letter, you would actually just divide that in half at your 4 1/4. But this one's 10.5 by 29.9, and I've scored it in the middle. I've also got a piece of petal pink. Now I've chosen petal pink because I really love this particular paper here, and this has got like a petal pink in the background. I sort of thought I'd look at with bubble bath, and it just really wasn't quite right, and so I want to use that. I did fussy cut this particular image, but I decided it had too much of the I want to say purple posy, but it's not purple posy, it's fresh freesia. So I just thought, no, I can keep that one for another day. So I've chosen this one here, which I've still yet to fussy cut, which has got a little bit more of this petal pink in the bird's breast colors. So it's got all the other colors in it, so you could add your fresh freesia and everything in it if you wanted, and your blues, but this is the colors I'm sort of looking at using at the moment. It's going to be quite a girly card, but then I usually do girly cards. Now I've also pulled out this die here, and this die comes from the Stippled Roses, which is also in our mini catalogue that will be coming out in January. Now if you don't have a demonstrator, please, by all means, and you're here in Australia, by all means get in touch with me. And once I have the catalogues in my hand, which would probably be mid to late December, I would say, okay, I've just lost my camera phone, so just bear with me. And let's just try this again. Sorry about this. So let me just bring this up again. Seems like my phone has, I'm using a couple of old spare phones, and they've taken a life of their own lately. Okay, I just got to change my camera view. Because you definitely don't want to see my ceiling. No, that should be correct. Let's see how we go. Let's see if we've got join your heads. I have to turn the camera around that way. No, it looks like before I had to turn my camera around because everything was upside down. But it looks like now it's corrected itself. Let's just bring that up in solo. Okay, that's better. Okay, everyone cross your fingers and let's hope that this doesn't drop out again. So we're going to use the stippled, one of the dies from the stippled roses. So which is this die here, which is quite beautiful and delicate. So we're going to start off with, and I'm going to do a bit of fussy cutting. So I'm going to try to do this as quick as I can. Now with fussy cutting, you can use scissors or you can use a craft blade. So with the, in the annual catalogue, the Take a Pick tool has got some new tools. And one of those new tools is a craft blade. Now, when I cut things using the craft blade or craft knife, I like to have a glass plate underneath it. So what I have got at the moment is a couple of picture frames where I've taken the glass out of it. Now, you've got to make sure, I bought them from the cheap shop here in Australia. That's what we call a reject shop. Make sure that it is glass, not perspex, okay? Because a lot of those cheap picture frames are actually perspex and not necessarily glass. And then I've just added some masking tape around the edge. Now, when you do this with a pair of scissors, what you do is you keep your scissors still and you turn your paper. And it's the same when you're using your craft blade. It'll slip on the glass underneath. If you use a self-healing mat, the blade actually gets stuck in the mat, so you can't turn your work as well. So by having the glass underneath, your work actually will slip quite easily, and your knife would, if you just hold it in one place, will just cut through. And one of these days, I have done a video, and it is on my YouTube, and I will go through that again probably in the new year. Now, those of you that are already demonstrators may know the reason why I'm going to wait till New Year to show you that particular technique. But it's basically the same as what we're doing here. So all I'm doing is I'm just holding my scissors in one spot. I'm not opening, well, I'm closing them very slowly, but I'm just turning my paper so I get a nice smooth curve when I'm cutting. If you tend to snip at it, which is not necessarily you're hacking, you're sort of snipping away like that, you'll get jagged edges. So by actually holding your scissors and just slowly closing them and then doing all the work in turning your paper with your other hand, you actually get a really nice curve and more of a smooth finish. But it is, again, like everything else, you need to actually practice it. So, you know, it's one of those things, it's just not going to just work for you. You are good, you know, good to get in and practice these things. And even with the blade, I mean, I used to, when I was doing scrapbooking, I cut many a title out with a blade, and some of them could be quite intricate, and just practiced with it. So there we go. So I hope that is helpful. I hope you've got some tips in there. So there's our little birds. So we're going to pop these ones to the side, and I will use those one day. Whoops, just took my light right down. So there's our little birds, all beautifully. Whoops, put that underneath the mic, underneath the camera. Sorry, and just fussy cut them. So we've got them cut. I've, as I said before, I've pulled out a piece of petal pink. I've cut this down to 1/2 centimetre smaller than my card front. So this is 10 centimetres by 14.4. And that's just a spare piece, I think. I have to check which size I've got there. I have cut one of these down. Oh no, both of these are also 10 centimetres wide. And they're a little bit longer. They're about 15 centimetres in depth. Okay, so I need to trim this down. But this one, I'm not quite sure yet what I'm wanting to do. I have an idea of what I want to do with that. So let's grab this piece first. Oh, excuse me. I rushed my dinner down. So I've pulled out one of my current favourite embossing folders, which is the Distress Tile embossing folder, because I want to give this a bit of texture. So I've got my cut and emboss here. I'm just going to move a few things out of the road. So I've got the big one here, and we need plate 1 and 4 for doing this. So I'm going to pop my cardstock inside my folder. I'm not taking it all the way up to the top. I'm wanting to make sure I get good coverage on the inside there. And when I put it through the machine, I'm putting it through folded edge first. Very important. If you do it the other way, you could tend to snap that fold, and we don't want to do that. So pop that through. Okay. That's done. I'm just going to bring my mini cut and emboss down and put this one towards the back. So I think we're finished with that one now. And we'll pop those there. So there we are. We've got a beautiful texture on that embossing folder. I'm just not quite sure whether the light here is really, let me just pop that up. There we go. We can see that better now. This is probably my favorite at the moment. Now, what I do want to do is I do want to give this a bit of a vintage look. So I'm just going to grab my petal pink ink pad if I can. Whoops. It's just a little bit out of unfortunately, all my reds and pinks are way down the other end and just out of arm's reach. I just dropped it. Hold on one sec. Sorry, I'm leaning across. Everything's just fallen on the floor as per usual with me. There we go. So I just want to add a little bit of blending around my edges on this. So I'm just going to grab a blending brush. Oops, everything's gone on the floor. I'll have to get down and pick that up before we go any further. But let me just do this. We just want to add a little bit of texture around the edges. And we're doing colour on colour here, so it will blend in quite nicely. Okay. So let me just fold this in half and grab my bone folder, which is just here. And that's going to sit on there. Now, not quite sure what I've dropped on the floor, but I'm hoping it's not something I'm going to desperately need. Hello, Joan. How are you? Hi, Deb. So, what we're going to do is design a series paper. Let me have a look at this. Now, I'm sort of not quite sure whether I'm going to do a strip of that or whether I might just tell you what I do want to do. I've got a little piece of vellum here and I've got my circle punch. I do want to cut a circle out with that because I want my birds to be sitting on there, because otherwise it's just going to be too much happening in around them, I think. I'm going to do a sentiment on. Okay, let's stamp our sentiment first because I want to do actually, and we'll die cut a few of those as well. So the sentiment I want to use is happy birthday. And it is this one here. I don't want one that's going to be too big because I don't want it to overpower the birds. Let's just grab a block. So I've got the G block here that should work. And got a piece of basic white there. And I thought I would use this Lost Lagoon because I'm going to die cut some Lost Lagoon leaves in that one. So I just want to tap that quite lightly. Don't want to put too much ink, and I don't want to put too much pressure on my stamp, even when and I'm actually going to turn this way because I want to have room to cut this down. You don't want to put too much pressure. You just want to actually tap that onto the paper and just hold it there for a few seconds to just let that ink absorb into the basic white. If you push down, I've noticed that the stamp tends to want to spread. So if you just sort of hold it gently on your paper, then you'll get a nice fine image stamped. Now I'm going to bring in my paper trimmer here, and I'm just lining up the edge of the curve of my paper trimmer on the plastic piece here that I hold with the bottom of the cursive letters, because I just want to be able to trim this down as small as I can. So I'm going to now flip that over, and I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm sort of taking into account how far it's coming in, and I'm also lining up the curve of this clear plastic strip with the top of my letters there, the capital letters. I just want to keep that a nice thin strip like that. So that's only about 1 centimetre in width. So that's going to go on there somewhere. So let's start having a look at what we can do. I think we might just cut a couple of these. Probably only need 2, and these are quite delicate. I really like these because this die, because the leaves are very, very delicate, and I think will suit the delicateness of this particular paper. So I want to get at least 2 of those. It's very pretty paper, Deborah. And look at this die. This is from, as I said, it's from the stippled roses. It's one of the dies that go with that. Maybe one you might need to be a little bit careful, like you may have to run it through twice. It's hasn't cut completely easily. It is coming out, but I'm just gently working it out. It is the first time I've used this die. Because there's some very fine branches in this, and if you're going to be too rough, you could tend to tear your branches. I'm just loosening this up a little bit, just giving it a little bit of a wriggle. So I haven't got it all out yet. It's not far off, but I think I probably just could have run it through just a second time. I think just some of the little fibres that the cardstock is holding on. Just very gently. There we go. So it's quite a delicate little die cut. So we'll need to cut another one of those. This time I'm going to run it through twice just to make sure that we've got it cut well. I might just send it through for a third time just to be sure. That's cut a lot better this time. Just There we go. There it is, that little one there. Now, we need to work out what size I'm going to cut this. So my idea was that this is going to go with that probably coming out. So let's maybe just work out how we're going to pop this. So I've got that coming there. So that's what I thought we would do there. So that's sort of looking, it's actually quite symmetrical or asymmetrical. It's got the same, asymmetrical, symmetrical. It's got the same both, like it's mirror imaged of each other. So what I might do, that's not a true mirror image. No, it's not a true mirror image because the flowers are in the same direction. But I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the back of this. Glue that down onto that vellum. And then the same here. So I'm only just popping it onto the ends. Just take that down a little bit more. So I've actually even joined those two, buttered those two together. It doesn't matter if there's a bit of glue in there because our birds are going to eventually hide all that. So then the birds can sit somewhere like that, or we could have them even going. Now that is quite pretty. I'm not wanting to put the birds down just yet, but that could be quite pretty going across there like that. So I think I like that going that way. So if the birds are going to sit on top of that, then that can come possibly around there. I was even thinking at one stage having that at an angle that way, the bird, that there. We'll have a look because I like it actually both ways. So we've just got to work out what we're going to do on this designer series paper, because then it'll let me know it'll tell me then what I need to do, if I need to do anything more with this. You're like, yeah, the birds are going to go across. It's whether the leaves go across, Deborah. So, or whether they're going to go more of an angle. So the leaves are either going to sit that way or that way. I mean, in some ways, you don't even need to add that paper because that is quite pretty, even like that. And then your birthday. So even that without the paper is actually quite very, very pretty. Could say I'm done. But I was thinking of adding this in somehow. Don't know whether I'm going to need it. What do you think? Do we need to add the DSP? Or is that going to be enough? And you could either have that going, because it is pretty background there with the embossing folder. The more I like it, more I see this like that, I'm actually quite liking that. It's just very simple. Yeah, it's gorgeous without the paper, isn't it? Just a narrow strip on the left side. Yeah, I'm just sort of wondering if it's because I was thinking of doing just a narrow strip. I was even thinking of doing a tear. Yeah, I don't know. Sort of want that don't want to cover up all those beautiful flowers. That's the thing. I'm just trying to think whether I should put a little bit of baker's twine. Not necessarily in the white either, although we have got white everywhere. I like things to be balanced. You've got to be very careful when you're putting your card together. You want to really think about, you don't want to put things in there just for the sake of putting it there. You want things to be looking balanced. You want to, and I tend to be a very symmetrical sort of person. We went down to Tasmania many, many years ago, my husband and I, and he does a lot of photography, and I took a camera. And I was taking things a lot through windows, but when I was looking through the window, I was looking at a path and a tree either side, or a doorway with a path in front of it and a tree either side. I was looking at everything and taking things that were very, very symmetrical. And I'm someone that likes to have things very balanced. So I'm very aware where things have got to go, and trying not to put things in places that are just for the sake of putting it on. I don't always get it right, by all means. I mean, we all have times where we get things, sort of not quite right, and um, you still just go with it. But sometimes too, it's also good to walk away and come back to something a little while later after you've had a bit of a look and a think about it, which is something sometimes I don't think we do enough. Is just walk away and sort of let things settle, or even let our minds settle a little bit before we come back and we start adding more things to it. Now I'm just very carefully adding some seal, because I'm thinking of adding just a little bit of twine in here. Actually might even just take that out for a second. I want to make it finer. If you twist these, you've then got all these little threads. I just want just a couple of threads. So I've just pulled out 2 threads there, because I do want this to look delicate. I don't want it looking too heavy. And all I'm going to do is just twist this around a little bit and just let those threads now. I could have put each one of these on independently, but it's working out okay. And I'm just going to trim that, just don't want that popping out. There we go. So just some little whispery bits to that. Okay, I think I'm going to stick this down. I don't think I'm going to add the designer series paper. I just think it's just enough on its own without it. Now, I don't like taking my glue all the way to the edges, because sometimes if you go too close to your edge, your glue will tend to ooze out. I don't want that happening. Give that a good firm press. Just turn it over, give it a press on the other side. just going to try something. Not quite sure. I'm not saying I'm going to do this. I'm just going to give this a bit of a trim down. I'll cut a piece about 4, and that's 5. Now, there is a direction with this designer series paper, and at the moment I've got it going in the wrong direction. If we have a look at, I'm hoping we can tell by this, but you do have branches going in one way. They're going up and down. They're not necessarily going across, but I have turned it here where it is going across. That could look quite nice too. So that's with a wider piece. And that's with a narrower piece. I actually quite like that as something a bit different. Now, the other thing you have to think of when you're going to position your centerpiece here is, where is it going to be? Now, I like things working in thirds. So I'll either position it sort of imagining the center through here, or if I put this little white piece, my center is going to actually come down a little bit lower. So it's either going to be sort of up in the top third or down here almost into the bottom third. But the one thing that you do have to be careful with, and I tend to like to go up into the top third myself, you don't want to go too close to the bottom. If you go too close to the bottom, particularly if, say, for example, if I had that there and I put my sentiment all the way down here, your sentiment can look like it's about to fall off your card. Now, I did show card ticket writing many, many, many years ago. I was still at school, so it's a long time ago. And one thing that they taught us was you have a bigger space at the bottom here. Now, this is a rough rule, doesn't work with everything you do, because there are some times that you want to write wording around the edge, and usually you will take it around either 2 or 3 or even the whole 4 edges. But if you've got something, you sort of draw a frame, an imaginary frame. So if I had grabbed a pencil here, and if I drew a card base there like that, okay, so you would then have an imaginary line coming down either side here and on the other side, which will be equal distances. Okay, so I hope you can see that. Then you would have almost the same sort of distance at the top, but at the bottom here you would have a greater distance. So this is sort of like your white space around the outside edge, and then this is the area that you fill with your elements that you're putting into it. So that just helps to keep things balanced. Of course, there are a lot more other things to take into consideration with balance and all that sort of thing as well, and white space and all that. But when I learned show card and ticket writing, that's one of the formats that they taught me. So, I mean, I was taught that back when I was 15. So that's, to be honest with you, 45 years ago. So it's almost become, for me, a natural way of thinking. And also too, because I have done a lot of photography, the other thing is, as I said before, is working in thirds. So when I look at placing things, I divide my page visually into almost thirds, whether it's thirds that way, as well as, like, of across as well as horizontal. Sorry, horizontal as well as vertical. But I generally will work with things in my top third, which is anywhere in that area there. So it's just above middle, or even just a little bit towards the middle. So when you start putting a card together, think about how it's going to look when you're finished. And yeah, yes, it does take a little bit of time to learn this sort of thing. And you will find, for a while that you will probably spend a bit more time on cards than you really may want to. But it is something to start thinking about, because you just don't want to have things just plonked there for the sake of plonking it there. Anyway, off my little soapbox, and let's start putting this together. So I'm going to cut this piece of designer series paper down, and I may cut it the same width as my card base. And I'm going to go, am I going to go the narrower one or the wider one? Because if you go the wider one, you can see a little bit more, but I actually think I like the narrower one. So, because then those leaves are actually coming off that page a little bit. So I'm going to cut this down to 10.5. Which is the width of my card. And that's going to sit just about there. So I'm going to glue that down. I'm going to glue it straight down onto my card base. I'm not putting this on dimensionals because I'm going to put some of my, well, I'm going to definitely put my birds onto dimensionals, and I've got a lot of lift in the leaves and everything. So that's sort of working in my, almost my top third. So up here is my top third. So my half is probably down here somewhere. So now I'm going to pop a little bit of glue on the back here. And that's going to have that sitting on there. I want to put some dimensionals on the back of these birds. We're going to pop them sitting in there. So you've just got a hint of that paper, designer series paper, coming out from underneath them. And then we can work out where we're going to position this. Now, I don't want it to necessarily cover up. Now, what I could do is I could cut this at an angle, have it going across that way. I could take it going right across. I could pop that in underneath there. I want it just so then it covers up that. I think it's covering up too much of the leaves. So I might do the angle. I'll angle it that way, angle it that way. Always have a little bit of a, which way do I angle it? Or we could take that. Can always cut another one of these and tuck a few more coming in. Just feel like it. Well, I don't. Oh, I think I'm going to cut that about there. Okay, here we go. It's cut. Yeah. And I'm thinking just to I just take a little bit more off there. It's going to come from the edge. Yeah, and I'm going to glue that, I think, flat rather than adding more dimensionals because it's got a lot of height already. Oh, I like that. And what I think I will do, now I'm just having a look to see whether I've got any. Let me just have a look here. Just pop that to one side for a second. No, that's too narrow. Okay, so I'm going to cut this down to, this is just to go on the inside of my card. So this is my insert. And I'm going to put, now I have got a little slither here, which is only, it's less than a centimetre, I think. So I could use that because, I mean, these little scraps are good to have. Just want to pop that down the side there just to give it a bit of, just make the inside look a little bit pretty. Hi, Leslie, how are you? Thank you for joining us tonight. So this designer series paper is going to be what you can get from the Sale-A-Bration in January. I mean, you can get this one for free when you spend $90. So there we go. We'll just add that inside just to give that little bit extra nice surprise when you open the card, and just finishes that card off beautifully. And I'm not going to add anything extra to this. I don't usually add lots of bling and things. I think that's got, for me, whoops, that's got quite a bit. Let's see if that can take into focus. I don't know whether it's focusing overly well. But there you go. That's my card for today. Now, I've got a fair amount of sewing to do this week, so I will try to, at some stage, add this to my blog. Probably could have trimmed that down or popped that on there a little bit straighter. Might just see if I can trim this down a little bit. There we go. So that is such a pretty card and so simple. So I hope you've enjoyed watching me create this card tonight. Keep your little pieces of baker's twine, because you can use them again in another card if you want to do something similar. Yeah, it's sometimes worthwhile just cutting that out, and that is just ended up being so pretty with just that hint of the floral underneath as well. So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed tonight. Thank you so much for joining us and chatting with us tonight. It's just been really, really lovely. Oh, you're Deborah. Okay. Oh, you're saying hi to Deborah. You're Sandra, Les's wife. Okay, then. Welcome, Sandra. It's really great having you on here. Okay, so thank you for joining me. It is fantastic to have you guys on here, and I really do enjoy our chats on Tuesday night and on Friday afternoons. So if you're available, join me again on Friday at 1 o'clock Australian time, and we'll create something else. I'm not sure yet what, but I'm sure by Friday I'll have worked something out. So have a lovely evening. Take care, and bye for now.